friends. My friend was his life like they said with 2 children and his wife like put them in the back. I'm scared.
Higher up, a satellite captures the seething, churning power of this, one of the biggest Atlantic storms on record.
You know, in the aftermath of the storm, this is in the immediate aftermath, the morning following, I remember walking my own community in East End and just hearing the rumors of how many people had died, right? I remember, for example, hearing of a family of 6 that had reportedly died in the East End community. And you look around and you see nothing but devastated structures, and you think that that's entirely reasonable. In fact, you think that you're just going to hear over the days that death toll rising, right? And I remember the night, a few days after the storm, finally getting the report of the official death count, and it came in at 4. And I remember actually being quite shocked at that figure, you know, thankful that it wasn't any higher, but just amazed by the fact that people had actually survived in the circumstances that they had. And I thought to myself, wow, there must be this collection of amazing survivor stories out there. And further, I thought there's this huge potential to use these stories to actually try to move people, and I think the majority of the world, from thinking about climate change in very abstract, futuristic terms, conceptual terms, to real, happening now, human terms. And I thought that our stories had the power to do that, to make climate change a real and present and gripping reality for people that required urgent action. I'm hopeful that the body of work, the Oma Diaries, is not seen as something of our past and sort of a historic book. I always wrote the Oma Diaries to be a book about the future, and a book that should remain relevant for as long as climate change is an issue that we have to grapple with.
Epiphania for me really was a celebration of the ability of people to rebound. You know, a story of resilience, less so one of just destruction and trauma and devastation. And it's to show that in the midst of pain, that there's always some dimension of hope that we can cling to. You know, literature is a powerful tool. It's one of the most, you know, ancient and eternal forms of expression that we have, telling stories, you know, to each other, to ourselves. So on the subject of climate change, it's really about elevating stories of experience that aren't at the forefront. You know, so when we talk about tragedy and disaster, we talk about it on a macro scale, on a national scale, on a global scale. But when we form these narratives on a personal level, it is, you know, harder to dismiss them.
VG Strong was formed very organically, if you will. Going into the storms, a group of us started preparing. We knew how bad it was going to be. We were watching intently, and we began to make plans of, let's do meet locations. If the valley is cut off, if North Sound is cut off, and just a group of concerned citizens said, let's start getting out messaging. We will meet here after the storms. Luckily, everyone showed up to the meet points, which was a really good thing. Virgin Gorda was indeed very blessed. We had people come out from electricity. We had people come out who were pastors, knowing about the mental side of things. We had people come out from construction. We had people come out knowing water and the whole system. Some of these people had set this up in Virgin Gorda way back in the day. And it was a meeting of the minds, and a meeting of community-minded people who decided that together we were much stronger, and we would have to put our own selves and our own families and our homes aside, because the focus right now had to be about the Virgin Gorda community and what was needed immediately in the aftermath.
When I was a child, it was the same thing the older generation used to do. The man then get together, clean up, rebuild. Every woman who could cook, whoever got a piece of food to cook. They prep food, elder generation, child, And in between the work, they make sure, yo, you take a break, come and get something to eat and drink. All the men would have never stay in this village. A portion would have go out to assist other village. That's how it was when I was a child at 13, 14, 15. I'm in my 60s now.
Well, unity, I think, is how we got through the event, and certainly was a big part of how we recovered from the event. And of course, we're still recovering. You know, the recovery is not over yet, and so it's important that we continue to stay unified through this experience. I can't think of a story in the Irma Diaries, for example, where persons did not depend on their neighbor to either get through the storm itself, and in many cases that was actually to save their lives, or did not depend on a neighbor or the wider community to survive in the immediate days following the hurricane. I think particularly of stories from Jost van Dyke, for example, where, you know, persons had lost everything, and Foxy's had been significantly destroyed as well. But the part of Foxy's that survived was the kitchen. And, you know, people sharing how the entire community ate from that kitchen. It was no longer Foxy's food, it was the community's food, you know, and by that just, you know, sharing with one another, making sure that what was mine became yours is how people were able to survive. Community resilience and unity are critical in the larger fight against climate change. And I say that both from the ends of thinking about what we call mitigation, which is our effort to halt or to reduce or limit climate change in the first place. So working to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. And it's also true in the sense of the other side of the coin, which is adaptation, which is what are we doing as impacted communities to build our resilience so that we minimize the impacts that we actually experience as a result of climate change. If we think about the BVI context or the Virgin Islands context, it's no good if one island alone is resilient and the others are not. It's no good if one community within an island is resilient and the others are not. It's no good if one home within a community is resilient and its neighbors are not. As the old phrase goes, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So certainly we have to make sure that every person, every community, every business, every home is brought along in our resilience journey. Because until we do that, we can never be truly a resilient country, resilient communities, and actually see the level of prosperity, should I say, that we would want to have. Because we don't just want to survive, we want to be able to thrive, right, in a changing climate.
While Hurricane Irma left a path of destruction in its wake, it also taught us that the strength of community resilience is an even more powerful response to the threats of climate change.